I didn't
Desperately
make
needs a nail trim.
I didn't make it. I didn't make it with you and the cat and that darn cat, but I saw it. I know it happened.
Yeah, as I've seen from that darn cat behind me, and that darn cat was in my hands a minute ago. Come here,
I don't know if I've seen
come here.
that darn cat.
I probably have. Come here, come back here.
So
He doesn't
I have
trust me
seen
at
the
all.
absent-minded professor, so that happened.
And I do have a darned cat. He just scratched me too, because that's
Hmm.
what the darn cat does.
And did not declaw the darn cat, which you don't have to. That's fine. I don't think our cat was declawed. He'd go out and be up to God knows
Decline is
what.
kind of considered a cruel and unusual punishment.
Right, right. Yeah, I know our cat was roaming the neighborhood doing God knows what his cats do. So,
Start the same pose. There we go.
hmm. We have to hold that for the entire podcast, of course, to not move from that position.
Well, of course, Mr. Serling wrote it. So speaking of Mr. Serling, I guess I gotta have a. I have this up. Each man measures his time. All right, here's
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
the prologue.
Right. The opening narration. That's what they call it on Wiki. I don't know if that's a
Yep.
actual phrase that needs to be used or not, but it doesn't need to be. But
And they keep the closing one in there too. Clocks are made for men. God creates time. I don't really practice my Serling as much as I should.
Hmm.
I end up sounding more like Andrew's Serling.
See, I have no reason to practice my Serling because other people do it. Because there's the intro to the podcast, which is kind of half doing one, but half not doing one. So, which I thought would be the right tact to go by. Okay. Well, I guess we will
But
start a show then, and I'll.
never go full Serling is your advice. Okay.
Oh, that's not my advice. I don't have to because it's just it's my intro to the podcast, right? Um, I guess go see Andrew, who likes to push it as hard as he can.
He definitely takes it to 11. I try to dial it back.
Welcome to Time Enough Past. Let me start that over again. Time enough past.
Pass pod.
It's 8:11 in the morning. Maybe I'll wait. Well, you can't hear the train anyway, but there's a train coming by. I feel like I should wait for the train now. Waiting for things that don't matter.
How close to the tracks are you?
A literal stone throw away. If I threw a stone out the window over there. Well, there's a house between,
Trying to
so
get the lay
maybe
of
it's
your
close.
neighborhood that day when we were looking at the map,
Oh,
and
right, right.
I never did. I find out exactly where you were, but I knew
Hmm.
approximately where you were.
I tell you, look for a white car, but everyone has a white car in Japan, so that won't help you.
Well, then buy a red car. Come on.
We used to have a red car, and then my wife and her father went and bought a new car, and they came back with a white one. I was like, why didn't we get a fun color? But whatever.
I got a blue car this time because I wanted a blue car. Finally got a blue car.
But then I drove a white car in the States. I had a Beetle, so Beetles make kind of sense.
I had a tan car.
It
It's my brother's Mustang for a
was called
while.
Snowball. That was the name of that car. Excuse me. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and hopefully say the name of this podcast correctly.
I just remember my last car was a white car. Okay, go ahead.
Welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we clock in each and every episode of The Twilight Zone and beyond. This is Matt here. Coming back over there is Brian. Have you been slumbering?
I've been slumbering for like 90 minutes.
90 minutes with slumbering. Okay.
Hmm
That is a more pleasant journey than 90 years without slumbering,
I think I
today's episode.
overslept 90 minutes today because I had a lot to do and I still have a lot to do, but I could have used that 90 minutes. Darn it.
Well, now you get 90 minutes with podcasting. Actually, this probably won't take 90 minutes. It rarely does, but occasionally it does. This was a half choice, I guess, on yours. You were like I'm choosing it, but it's not a hard selection. I could give
I
it away
was
to someone
thinking of
else.
I think I was thinking of the Long Morrow, which is about an astronaut who does sleep for 90 years or for a very long time. And so I picked it out and I realized, oh no, it's the one about Edwin and the clock. And I thought, well, that's okay.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it
Some
was
wind
fun because
time.
I don't think going in and watching it, I don't think I've seen this one. I probably read about it 100 times and deluded myself into thinking I thought I'd seen it, but
I know I have seen this one a few times. While I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, on those 2000 era DVDs I had, it was on a disc with a few of my favorites, so it would still, you hit play all and you'd see it. So I wasn't skipping it or anything, but yeah, it's bookended by episodes I like better. I cannot remember what they were on the disc, but something was there that I liked. So, uh, I have seen this a few times. I've probably gotten to know Edwin better in the past few years because I've become more obsessed with, weird old crap, which he's like the king of, right?
I always think of him primarily for his prior effort in the Twilight Zone, which is the infamous Christmas episode. No, it was a Christmas
No, no,
episode.
no. He's one for the Angels, which maybe aired at Christmas, or maybe I aired my episode at Christmas, but it feels
No,
Christmassy.
I was conflating it with the Art Carney episode Night of the Meek because they both took place probably in the same backlot set and went outside
Right,
and
right. When both of
running
them, I
around
mean,
a lot with old
one
men
for
in
the
the
Angels
street. So
involves some toys, right? Which this episode does not, unless you count a grandfather clock as a toy. So you can if you want. Well, let's see. I will do some trivia for this. Original air date was December 20th, 1963. Teleplay was by Richard DeRoy, based on Tick of Time by Johnson Smith. Now, if you don't recognize the name Richard DeRoy, it is because he is not real. George Clayton Johnson used that name as a pseudonym. In his script, Sam Forstman did die along with the clock, and he found the changes to the story to be anticlimactic. This episode was directed by Roger Kay. I could not even click on his name. He doesn't even have a red link on Wiki, so that's all I'm going to say. If anyone out there is a big Roger Kay fan, you know where to send your messages. The score in this is by Bernard Herrmann, mostly riffing off the theme of My Grandfather's Clock, a Twilight Zone legend. This is his final score for the series. Edwin played Sam Forstman. He got started right along with the advent of film, rocked the vaudeville stage, did his own radio show in the 30s, and his own variety show from 1949 to 1950. To be honest, most of this has been lost to the ravages of time, but you still know him as the voice of the Mad Hatter in Disney's Alice in Wonderland, as Uncle Albert in Mary Poppins, and of course his final film role as Rufus the Gnome King in The Gnome-Mobile, also one of the final films Walt Disney himself worked on. Twilight Zone viewers should remember him from season one's One for the Angels. Doug Kirk was played by James Callahan. Though a quarter century of age on him, you may recognize him from his role as Walter Powell on Charles in Charge, a show I know I saw a lot of when I was like 10, but couldn't tell you much about now. Carolyn Kearney was Marnie Kirk, William Sargent was Dr. Mel Avery, and Carol Byron played Carol Chase. I'm fire hosing all of that because I could not find much more info on those actors. I was sitting there like William Sargent, that must be something, but then I'm like, oh, probably mixing Dick York and Dick Sargent, and yeah, just like wires crossed, and
yeah,
that's
it
why it
sounded
sounds
like
familiar.
a familiar name, but not familiar in the way you think it
Wiki
is.
did not reveal that to be a familiar name, so but that's like half the cast. If I don't mention them, then I've just skipped half the cast, which seems wrong as well.
Well, we should remember them for this episode of the Twilight Zone.
Hey, if you're remembered for an episode of The Twilight Zone, it's not the worst, and only that, it's not the worst. And we've had a few. Was it The Grave where they had that the sister, the actor gave like a really good performance, and we could find like nothing else she did really. So I think it's The Grave, and yeah, it's like, oh, well, that was a great performance, but that's all she's known for. Weird. A couple of the kids, little girl Lost, she's basically just in the Twilight Zone, right? She's in a couple episodes here, and that's about it.
We've determined that literally is the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Can you give us an opening narration for this one?
Each man measures his time, some with hope, some with joy, some with fear. But Sam Forstman measures his allotted time by a grandfather's clock, a unique mechanism whose pendulum swings between life and death, a very special clock that keeps a very special kind of time in the Twilight Zone.
Now you sent there's the song, of course. You sent along a link, My Grandfather's Clock. I never heard the
Yeah.
song in the States. I don't know if this is like a song that we just don't do anymore. The first time I heard it was playing in with an orchestra in Japan, I think for a kids concert, and we played it, and it was like
I
new
was
to me at that
I
time.
was looking up the song and realizing because he only quotes bits of the song and he talks about the song, but yeah, it seems like this whole episode is based on this song. It's basically the plot of the episode is the plot of the song. And yeah, it's from the early 1900s. It's I assume public domain because they just use it like you pointed out. Bernard Herrmann kind of just riffs on it a lot in the score. But I don't remember the song either. That's why I sought it out and I found that link I sent you of a recording, a little 78. But yeah, it's just, I guess George Clayton Johnson was very openly just saying, I'm just going to tell the story of this song as a Twilight Zone episode. And so not a lot of originality there. I thought the, uh, the song, though, did become very popular about a year before this episode in Japan. There was a recording of it that took off in the charts or something. And then it found its way into the school curricula of Japan, according to Wikipedia.
Yes,
So that's
yes.
why you ran headlong into it working in the schools of Japan.
And I actually thought it was a Japanese kid song for a little while because there are Japanese kid songs about, acorns and stuff like that, right? So I thought it was a
Hmm.
and I did know before this episode that it in fact was from the West and just kind of got forgotten there and remembered here. Uh, but yeah, I also don't particularly like the song that much.
I'm reminded of this song, a completely different country, Australia, called the Kookaburra song that was written by a school teacher like 100 years ago, and all the school kids sang it. And then, unfortunately, the main riff of it kind of ended up in the song Down Under by Men at Work, where he's playing the flute. Do, 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 that part.
Oh, right. Okay. I can live with
Well,
that.
unfortunately, the woman was still alive, but she didn't own the rights to the song anymore. So the IP owners of the song pursued Men at Work for years over that one stupid little flute riff in that song. I think they eventually won, and I think it
Okay.
may have even led to the death of what was his name, Greg Ham, the blonde-haired guy
Well,
from Men at
it's
Work, because he
it,
was got so depressed over the whole situation. Says, I didn't rip it off, but it kind
w-
of sort of sounded like it. But it's like it's in the zeitgeist, right? It's like if it's in be deep in your childhood, you may not even realize you've riffed on a piece of
well,
music
the
you heard as a
the
kid.
school
So
teacher got something back, I guess. So that's better than say Bill Finger and Batman. And did
well, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering if anybody was still owning the copyright on this song at the time the Twilight Zone episode came out, because it was already an old chestnut that Grandpa was singing, right? Also,
well,
the notion that a grandfather's clock is what we call a grandfather clock, is grandfather's clock came from that song because it was plural, it was possessive. My grandfather's clock, it kind of mutated into grandfather clock, and it just entered the curriculum or the what am I saying, the
vernacular.
vocabulary. Vernacular as a word, that's a good word. I clearly don't have a good vocabulary today of any long tall clock like that. It's now called grandfather clock from
Oh
that
yeah.
song.
Oh, okay. See, I guess that see, it's yeah, chicken and the egg, right? It's a song named after the clock, or the clock named after a song, which I guess is.
Apparently it's the clock is named after the song. So that's another weird thing about that song. It's so much weird trivia around this, this one song.
Oh, hey, take it back to the Royal Navy for some more fun with grandfather clocks. That was like one of that was the space race of the late 19th century, was to make an accurate clock that you could have on a wooden ship.
Oh, the chronometer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were going to offer huge sum of money to whoever could do it. And that one Englishman, was it Harrison? I
Yeah.
think it was,
And it was a
finally
pendulum, right?
did.
So it wasn't, I don't know if it's specifically a grandfather clock, but it was the pendulum mechanism that I think did the trick.
The pendulum, no, the pendulum was the problem because it
Oh,
kept going off when you're on a ship. The ship's rocking. So he was the one
right.
who designed one that was all springs and gears, like the very first accurate chronometer. And it was about the size of a dinner plate. It was like this big around.
Okay. So
But
I'm
it did
getting
the
the history
trick.
of it backwards there, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The pendulum was the problem. The spring escapement was the solution.
Hey, that'd be a good name for this episode. The pendulum was the problem. It is a problem pendulum. He has to keep fixing it. I don't know. Do you have any gear that is aging and you just have to keep trying to keep it going? Not because you think you're going to die with it, but that you just keep going. I keep making music on an iPad that's now 5 years old, but that's because my newer iPad, like they broke it, you know? you can't use it anymore to make music properly. So I'm using this really old iPad and just waiting till the battery finally gives up on me. Behind this laptop, I have another laptop. If folks were listening to my podcast about 10 months ago, you heard a lot of crackle. That's when I had to like stop using that computer because in the end, I believe it was the computer. So, but
Oh yeah, you kept thinking it was the mic, but it wasn't the mic, it was the
it
computer
might have been a
itself.
little of both, to be honest. But
Oh,
the the thing is, the computer's still here because there's still occasion I'm saying, hey, there's something. I mean, I turn it on less and less. I'm definitely not as obsessed as I keep wanting to call him Edwin, but I should call him his character's name. I'm certainly not as obsessed with it as Forrest Mint is, but
Sam.
I
We'll just
I
call him
have I
Sam.
have not been willing to put it in the closet yet. And technically, yeah, it is technically on at the moment and sleeping. It's just it's been slumbering for not 90 years, but I doubt I've turned it on for a month and a half.
90 days.
Yeah, I did move all my photos to the newer machine, and so that's you want to make sure that important stuff like that makes it to your newer device, of course.
It's probably time I got a new computer. This one's been going for 10 years or so at this point. So,
But even then, I do a lot of tweaking, like clock winding. Like I put the pictures in the pictures folder, and then Windows wanted to just start doing stuff with it. I'm like, no, I just want them in there. I just want them there, you know. So I ended up putting them in my downloads. But that's tech talk. I
you
guess
have to
that's.
create a folder that Windows won't usurp and take over for its own.
Can you talk about clocks for hours, watches, horology?
Well, maybe a little. I'm no expert on clocks. I appreciate clocks. I've owned a few. I like them. I'm like uh timekeeping in general. I used to always listen to WWV on shortwave to get that signal to know what time it is, from Colorado. And all these modern clocks. In fact, I just had to go set a bunch thanks to daylight saving time. Um, all have these automatic, what they call atomic time. There's just a radio signal from that atomic clock in Colorado that tells you exactly the time. So I've always been kind of fascinated by that. And then I think I've talked about watches a little bit. I started buying a few, bought this Casio a while ago for the first time in a long time. I hadn't been wearing watches, but all the watch talk was last time for a kind of stopwatch. I seem to have gotten into
A watch loop?
chronology
Yeah. Okay, we'll keep it on clocks.
episode.
We'll keep it on
Are
clocks.
there more clock episodes we have to do this season? I have to
Hmm.
double check the list.
Yeah, well, the podcast artwork for this podcast has been relatively clock based. So there is something about the Twilight Zone and clocks. I guess, at this point we're seeing them float through space in the opening credits and stuff. So
Yeah, that invokes it immediately. You see that clock flying through space. There's a
you do
couple episodes later on in other series that involve clocks, but we won't talk about them now. But I'll try to nail those down when we get to them, I guess.
like are you familiar to a relatively famous jazz album cover, Eric Dolphy's Out of Time? Are you familiar with this album? Have a look at it. Anyway, it's got a whack clock on it. One great album if anyone wants to listen to some early 60s acoustic jazz. But that cover just screams to me Twilight Zone because it's a weird clock.
I'm just gonna Google it as quickly as
That's
I
what
can.
I
What's it called? Eric who?
Eric Dolphy, Dolphy. Chill album, very good. Haven't listened to it for a
Hmm.
while. I kind of gotten stuck on a 70s fusion, especially spacey 70s fusion.
I don't see that album cover popping up.
Oh, excuse me, Out to Lunch is the name of the album.
Oh,
Again, it's
okay.
it's been
Wrong
a
time.
while. Yeah, not Out of Time, Out to Lunch. And then
Out
he's
of
got an album called
lunchtime.
Out There, which has, if it's not a dolly, it's very dolly looking on the cover. He has very Twilight Zone album covers to his jazz records.
Hey, I see "We'll Be Back" sign in a window.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
see when I see
yeah, but
that.
then look at the clock on it.
Oh, I see the clock has like 7 hands on it. Yeah,
Seven
that's
hands
pretty
of
cool.
varying length. So to me, like when I think of the Twilight Zone, that's honestly, even though that's a jazz album, that's one of the first images that blasts into my mind.
That's a very 50s, 60s jazz cover.
Right. So there is something very, yeah, Twilight Zone about clocks, I guess. More so than watches.
Well, how many more watches or clocks have we dealt with so far?
I guess it's
Just
just time.
thinking.
One of the first things that you twist when you want to have a Twilight Zone,
Hmm.
time and space. You can twist time and or space. So it's kind of a signifier, I guess.
So we had the time stopping with the watch. That was pretty interesting. But
Well, this
most
is
time
more of a
travel in the
life
Twilight
clock,
Zone,
right?
yeah, most time travel in the Twilight Zone involves just walking a long way. You walk down a road, walking distance. You walk over a rim, and you're in another time. There's
Right,
there's
right.
no explanation to it. You're just there. You walk out of the men's club. Oh, now it's Civil War. That sort of thing. It just keeps happening that way, and it's just this weird organic, like, oh, it's just happening to you for no scientific reason. There's no mechanism that's propelling you through time. That stuff didn't come till maybe later on in the series, and maybe there's more of it to come. But this episode had no time travel in that regard, just reminiscence of Grandpa Ed
But
Wynn.
it had a guy obsessed with the clock to the point that he tied his life to the clock, which is, kind of interesting.
Yeah, the idea that he was obsessed with it is and believed in it is the part of the story that doesn't seem to emanate directly from the song. The song doesn't seem to suggest that he's consciously aware of it or just in hindsight say, "Oh, that was weird. It rang 24 times when I got married," or something like that. Those sorts of things in the song's narrative that didn't find its way into this episode. But in this one, it's his mortality is at stake. He's consciously thinking about it and he's thinking it's going to happen. And the really weird meta thing about it is that the song that it's based on is in the episode itself. So he's thinking about the very song that the plot of the episode is about. So you think, well, if it carries straight through beginning to end of the same as the song, then there's not going to be any surprises, which is probably why they wanted to rewrite it. Although his death in the original script, I think, was something like the clock falls on him or something, and that's how he dies.
Oh, okay. I see. I would just assume the clock stops, like when the workers are there, and the clock stops, and he just kind of has a stroke or something.
No, I think that the clock was gone, and he got desperate. And he tried to steal the clock and bring it back home, like not from the neighbors, but from somewhere. And he had it on a wagon, and he was trying to keep it running while it was on the wagon. And then when he got to the house, he tried to pick it up, and it falls on him. And of course, it stops running and he's dead or he's very close to death. I think it ticked a couple more times long enough for him to say goodbye and then he died. And so that's how I think Clayton Johnson's original script went
Okay. I,
from
I
what I
guess I
saw.
guess nobody wants to see poor old Wen eat it at the end of the episode.
No, I mean,
So
why would you want to kill Ed Wynn? Come on. The same thing happened with one for the Angels. We don't want to see him die. We have to keep Ed Wynn alive.
what if we cast someone more curmudgeonly in this role, and then the episode maybe makes more sense ending that way? But then there's just like nobody to get to back. I mean, Rod has to give the prologue like this guy's a scumbag in that case, and that's less
Hmm.
fun of an episode.
It's not one of those judgmental, like, oh, this guy is going to get his comeuppance from the Twilight Zone because he's a terrible person.
There's the
Or
thing
this.
about machines, right? You could run it that
Hmm.
way, where he does get killed by the machines in the end. Of course,
Yeah,
he's
the
running
justice
from
of the
them.
Twilight Zone is usually a good person is given a second chance, or a bad person is given some really ironically horrible end. And neither one happens here. And so the great debate over that, the great annoyance with this episode by both George Clayton Johnson and, of course, Mark Sakri's book, and he wrote about it, is just that this guy believed this all his life, and then he just had a dream, and he woke up and talked himself out of it in the dream.
That was a little weird. I guess that's a bit of a astral projection because they play it like, oh, he's dying now, psychological suicide, which
Hmm.
I think people can, your mind is powerful. You can do that. There's a
You
thing.
think so? I always kind of wondered about that. Can you just depress yourself to death or just frighten yourself to death just by thinking about it?
Well, my buddy Scott, who's been on an episode of this podcast, he's Australian, and he says there's a Aboriginal thing where the shaman points a bone at someone, and that signifies that person is about to die, and that person generally would die. But then when the Europeans came and the shaman pointed a bone at some of them that were being pricks, nothing happened because they didn't believe anything. But if you're in the society and that happens, it's like, oh my God, I'm doomed, and then you just you kind of shut down or whatever, I guess.
Well, yeah, well, that would probably result in just not eating or drinking and lying in bed until you waste away, not, suddenly dropping dead of a heart attack or whatnot.
Padme died of a broken heart.
Hmm.
That didn't really sit well in that case, so maybe I should not use that as an example. But that is what Ed Wynn's about to do in this. Broken heart of a clock. He was really into his clock, so yeah.
Hmm.
There's also a thing of just throw your stuff away, which to a certain extent is good. Certainly gone through purge cycles, but then it's like, hey, are you gonna purge, say, my guitars?
Yeah.
I don't want to purge those, you know. So
So yeah,
I'm connected to some of my
Yeah,
crap.
his family tried to Marie Kondo him out of the situation by telling him get rid of the old clock. Oh, it does
Um,
spark joy with him, so clearly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're 76 and you're obsessed with clocks, is that really that big a problem?
No,
It,
it's not
it,
like the clock was a menace to the household. It wasn't. If the clock were malevolent and causing people problems somehow, like it would strike 12 and someone would trip down the stairs or something, and they would blame the clock. But the clock had no agency, no sort of, sentience about it. It was just a clock. The clock didn't. That's the thing about this episode. The clock didn't seem to have any magical powers other than what was
breaking down a
projected
lot.
to it. Yeah, it was old and it broke down, but it didn't seem to manifest any force on anybody other than the psychological hold it had on Ed Wynn. So,
I mean, the worst the family really has to say about it is it's an eyesore when he moves it downstairs, which was, and also it now blocks the door, which that's got to be annoying.
well, I don't know if that painting he put it in front of was an eyesore to begin with. So I don't know who wins that argument. That was got a weird painting, as I recall.
Yeah, but you can open the door at that point, so that's nice. Um, a couple of the actor hits, I did again. I wanted to put them on as trivia because I did think Carol, played by a lady named Carol, was a fantastic airhead in the scene she's in, and I thought the Dr. Mel Evie performance was, reasonably good. So I was kind of surprised when I didn't find info on these actors.
That is strange. It's like they're in their own Twilight Zone of some sort.
Yeah, just it kind of popped in, owned the scene they were in, and then they're out. So a literal, well, actually, not even 15 minutes of fame. 25 if I'm
Well,
going to count the whole episode. Three
sometimes,
if you're going to count the scene they're in.
sometimes, actors turn up in the darndest place. I was mentioning off screen that I just acquired this box set of The Man from Uncle. And was watching the first episode, and there's a scene where Napoleon Solo is running through this plant, trying to dodge the evildoers who own this plant. He runs up a flight of stairs and he looks up and he's confronted face to face with this worker who's Richard Keel from To Serve Man, and amongst other things, Jaws from James Bond. And I was like, wait, what? Richard Keel's this? And you think that's the kind of role he would have been in and probably was if it weren't for a couple of major ones. We would never have thought to look him up and think, who's this guy? Because he's kind of ordinary looking guy in this Man from Uncle episode. He's not an alien. He's not a guy with metal teeth or anything. So some of these actors might have, it's just, the fate of acting. You may become famous, you may become obscure.
Actually, I
So,
got my mind blown a little bit last week. I might have even said it in the trivia at the time, but not known the specific connection. I got actually a link here from John Champion about Twilight Zone actors who later appeared on Seinfeld and did not make the connection that the hot, sweaty lady in the Midnight Sun is later in the Seinfeld episode The Gymnast, who is the girlfriend's mother who thinks George Costanza is a hobo. He's got the eclair. He picks up the eclair from the top of the garbage, so she's like, oh, that's her.
I think I remember that one episode. Yeah, well, it's just sitting on top of the garbage. It hardly touched anything. What's wrong? It's on its own plate. It's
Right,
not
right,
garbage.
right.
Come on.
And then later for some reason he has to take his shirt off when he uses the restroom, and that she accidentally comes in, and oh no, it's more hobo behavior. But I didn't
So
make
is
the
that
connection.
Lois
That's
Nettleton, the girl from the
yeah,
Midnight?
yeah.
Well, I
So
know.
that's
I think of
crazy.
her as
And-
from a Babylon 5 episode in the 90s where she turned up as one of Londo's wives or something.
right, right. So there's someone that did keep working. I'm sure in the trivia it's like she later showed up on Seinfeld and Babylon 5,
Hmm.
but didn't like specific. Once you, especially Seinfeld, you start thinking, wait, that character? No way, that's crazy. Of course, if Ed Wynn had lived 30 more years and showed up on Seinfeld, that would have made perfect sense. He would have made a perfect Seinfeld character. That's no question about that.
Well, it's fun to take any two of your favorite shows that have long runs and just see how many actors crossed over, unless they're from different sides of the ocean or something. There's not many British actors who've been in American television and vice versa.
I was about to say I should drop Seinfeld though, because we have international people listening to this, and it seems Seinfeld is a show that really never broke out of the States. Like another, like Japan, it's nothing. Friends was extremely popular in Japan. They called it a drama for some reason, but nobody knows Seinfeld here. And talking to Luke, who's around here sometimes, he's not that familiar with Seinfeld, I believe. So it's kind of like a just an American phenomenon with that show.
I'm I have to confess I was never a huge Seinfeld watcher, so I only am familiar with a handful of Seinfeld stories and some of the more infamous ones like the Soup Nazi and whatever that keep cropping up over and over. I
Right, but
had
that's
to
the
make
point.
myself
In
familiar with.
American culture, it's so permeated that, even if you don't watch a show, you know a little bit about it. But abroad, that's not so much the case. Because the Twilight Zone, not much of a thing in Japan, as I've said many times. The Tower of Terror here is rethemed. Great, it's a great retheming, but it's not Twilight Zone anymore. Although it's a Twilight Zone-ish story. But in Paris, you can get away with Euro Disney having their own Tower of Terror or had it, or I don't know if they still have it or not, but it is weird
Well,
the footprints that these things have
I'm
sometimes or don't have.
thinking of Ed Wynn again. I was just wondering if he were still alive, what Disney voices would he have provided in later films? I'm certain he would have been somebody in the Little Mermaid. He
Oh
would have
yeah,
played him in
yeah.
the Little Mermaid.
You give him Danny DeVito's role in Hercules. I mean, Danny DeVito's great in it too, but I could see Edwin doing that one, which is Hades goon. I think no, no, no. He's the teacher for Hercules, the satyr, half what a goat guy. He's the goat boy.
He would have turned up in the Star Wars holiday special.
Oh God, yes. Yeah, yeah, the ghost of Edwin must be in there somewhere.
He would be, yeah, alongside Harvey Korman and B. Arthur.
Yeah, 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 right on. That's my annual Christmas viewing. Although it's a holiday special. It's not a Christmas special. They're
Holiday, it's
celebrating.
Life
Yes,
Day.
they're celebrating Life Day. That's right. So, with the Jefferson Starship. Okay. Yeah, there's still Jefferson at that point. How is your internal clock, by the way? I'm pretty good at like I'll wake up and think, oh, it must be blah blah, and then look at my clock and it is that. I rarely set an alarm, so
Mm,
usually
hit
no,
and
I'm
miss. It's
okay.
hit and miss. I will wake up thinking, oh, it's got to be, 9 o'clock. And I'll look and say, yeah, it's 9 o'clock.
No, this
I have
morning
a weird schedule. I tend to want to sleep till noon, but then
mm,
when I want to, I end up waking up at 10 and then I'll fall asleep and then I'll wake up at like 1:30.
no, I work a little late, but not that late, so my hours aren't horribly destroyed. But like this morning, I woke up and I'm like, oh, it must be 6:09, and I look at the clock and it's 6:09. So I'm like, right
You
on.
know a time that keeps turning up when I wake up and I look at it, it startles me.
Six, six,
11, 11
six.
no, 11:38. 1138.
Oh,
Like
okay.
like
So
THX
yeah,
1138.
yeah, yeah,
I go, "Whoa."
yeah. Yesterday, I looked at the clock and it was exactly at 11:11 and 11 seconds. That's always fun when that happens. So,
Oh, well that should happen today because it's 11:11.
oh, geez, it happened yesterday. Crap, I got it one day off.
Well, is it coming up soon? What time is it now?
Well, yeah, in the 2.5 hours, I'll see if it
Okay,
happens
well,
again.
grab your cell phone, take a picture of it. It's
Yeah,
11:11:11 on
magic,
11:11,
magic. It looks like your clock is broken in that case, doesn't it?
and I'll do it tomorrow because that's when it happens here in America.
But let's see, what else have I? I am a bit obsessed with my iPad's battery percentage. I'm notorious for plugging it way before I should. Like if it's at 80, I'm already like, Now I do have a new phone. I'm very good at letting my phone get down to 50 before plugging it in. But my iPad, I'm just like I obsessively charging. And my old phones too, which probably took the life out of those. So getting obsessed with it, does damage to the gear.
Well, you think obsessing over your phone's charge, imagine if you have an electric car. Because right now I have one sitting in the driveway thinking I should put some more juice in it because we did a lot of driving around yesterday. But now we got to go shopping here after. after we do this, and I'm going to end up trying to figure out, well, what's the best way to charge it tonight? Should I just charge it at home? Should I find a free charger? Maybe I can get a little charge here, charge there. It's like, but I don't want it to get too low. I don't want it to stay too high. It's one of those things where if you overcharge it constantly, it wears the battery down, which I don't know if it's a concern with phones and tablets.
I believe it is. I think you're only supposed to, charge them so many. They have so many charges or whatever, initial charges. So,
Hmm.
the thing is, I'll drive my car. It's a gas car, but I'll drive that until the needle hits E and not really worry about it. But my iPad's at 70%. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta plug it in.
Well, it's because your gas tank won't suffer if it goes empty and then gets refilled, as opposed to a battery, which I guess does suffer if you don't let it go empty and get refilled or something like that. It's got to
Right.
flex those little electrons in there a lot, I guess.
That's what this episode does. It just slams you into gear talk, I guess, because that's what he does. He's basically gear talking. It's just, not that many people obsess on clocks. Some people do. Some people like to build Swiss watches.
Well, if he didn't obsess on clocks, we wouldn't have a story because he would have just probably have ditched the clock years ago and gone on to become an accountant or whatever his passion was, and he would never have thought of it again,
It
and
would
he
have just
wouldn't
been a
worry about
affable
dying.
old fart hanging around the house. So, well, let's throw some questions. Who goes in or through the Twilight Zone in this episode?
Well, I guess we're supposed to think it's Sam, but again, this is one of those episodes where the rational explanation is just as valid as we don't really see too much evidence of the clock having that power over him. I mean, every time he is having an episode like he fell down the stairs and the clock stopped, or when was he was separated from the clock, he knew it was winding down next door. Um, he was cognizant of the clock stopping, so he kind of triggered his own phobia by seeing it happen and passed out, had a fainting spell or whatever. But again, we don't really have any other evidence that the clock has
But the clock
any
does that every
evil
other
powers.
day. So it
Yeah,
wasn't, it was a pretty reasonable guess.
yeah, it was. Oh, yeah, he was well aware. That's what he was threatening over. He thought, oh, it's going to wind down this evening, Sunday night before they get home. So I got to go. I got to go break into their house because that's always going to work out well. And I'd like to
Maybe.
see cops that are all right, all Johnny on the spot like those cops were. The
Well,
second a
also,
crime happens, they're there.
if you're gonna smash your neighbor's window, maybe look behind you before you do it.
Or smash the window that's not facing the street where the cop is driving by at that
Yeah.
very moment.
Yeah, we don't confirm that the clock stops at the exact moment he says it stops because those folks are on vacation. So we don't, it could be an hour later, an hour earlier. It's kind of just a metaphor, isn't it?
And he seems to feel convinced that the clock will never run again once he's dead. It kind of works both ways, but they could have come home, rewound the clock, and it's ticking away the next day. And he comes by to visit just to say goodbye to the clock and say, "Hey, it's still running." Oh, would that just reaffirm his notion that it's the clock keeping him alive, that he sees it running, or would expect the clock to be kaput and no longer functioning
Perhaps he
in the
comes back
cycle?
as a zombie. The clock stops for a day, Sam's dead, and then it starts running again, and we get zombie Sam. That could have made a fun episode.
Oh yeah, or or the grandchild, the great grandchild is born, and the clock stops ticking. Then, in fact, I think maybe that's what happened in the original story. The clock starts running again when the grandchild's born, and he dies. I don't know. I don't remember the
Hmm.
details. But who went to the Twilight Zone? I don't know.
He's kind of
I
mind
guess
gaming himself in the end.
he's just kind of playing and he
And
talks himself out of it. That's what everybody hates about it. It's like, I got a grandchild on the way. I'm not going to die. Screw you, lifelong belief in this clock. And then he just goes about his life. And it's like, well, were you ever really in the Twilight Zone? I guess the Twilight Zone was just his own fear. It wasn't really
and he
a
gets over his fear
supernatural
at the
thing.
end. So with the help
Yeah.
of a psychiatrist, which I mean, usually you'd paint in this or in the Twilight Zone, like his family's like forcing him to go see the psychologist and stuff, and that would be a bad thing. When here, it makes a happy ending. So I guess that's cool. Go get mental help, and then things get better.
Another sign that, yeah, it was just a mental health issue and not a supernatural issue. Sometimes they send him to the psychiatrist. We, the audience, can see that unexplainable things are happening to the character and they're not crazy, but they're treated as crazy.
Here
It's
he is a
the
little crazy and the doc does his job. So that's kind of weird and that yeah. It's maybe again that's why George Clayton Johnson didn't like the changes to his script. It's now just kind of like guy's a little nutty, sees a psychiatrist, gets over it. That's the story of this episode.
well, yeah, I think well, that leads us straight to our next question, doesn't it? How trippy is it?
Oh, we skipped "Did he deserve it?" Which he did it to
Oh, I'm
himself and
sorry, I
he
missed
got
it.
over it.
Did he
Well,
deserve it?
I was going to gloss over that question, but yeah, I just feel like it should be asked. So
Well, as you just said, he got through it with a little help from his psychological friends. So, he he didn't suffer any long-term consequence. In fact, he seems to have cured himself of his obsession of it. So, I guess being a nice guy, he deserved being cured. So, I suppose that would be how you'd spell that out.
Edwin only shows up for happy Twilight Zones.
Yeah, we can't have a sad Edwin Twilight Zone. That's just not in the cards.
But yes, let's take it to the tripometer. 0 is not trippy. 5 is very trippy. Where are you on this
Um,
one?
oh, I'm pretty low on this one. I might even give it like a half point, maybe one half star.
I'm somewhere around there. One half floating eye is that. I never really thought about how what these numbers represent. Yeah, I was thinking "Oh, it's a 2. I was like, is it even a 2? So I'll take it to a 1.5.
I
Just
might have taken it all the way to 0, but I'll give the clock the benefit of the doubt. It had a grip on him, even if it was just an inert piece of wood and gears.
sometimes being a bit ambiguous can, make it a little trippy, which this one is. Like again,
Yeah,
is the clock, it seems it's just maybe a clock that's running.
could just be a clock. Sometimes a clock is a clock, said
Yeah,
Sigmund
yeah.
Freud.
So that's this one. It's not a clock floating through space as is promised to us in the opening credits.
Now, yeah, if the clock took off and flew to another owner, that would have been the perfect ending.
A bit incongruous, but I guess the Twilight Zone's been known to do that. But it has to have some pizzazz behind it, right? You can't, yeah, have to try and put some pizzazz, or you've just made a bad episode.
Well, the
Um,
clock just speaks up and says, "My home planet needs me," and it flies into the air.
right. I mean, I guess in the terms of this episode and watching, it's just like, do you like Ed Wynn? Which I think the answer should be yes, and that deserves gives it a deserving view, makes it deserving of a view.
Well, I'm glad to see he got, yet another paycheck in his waning years.
Right,
I don't
right.
know if he
He's
was
pretty
had
busy in his
any
waning years.
I don't know if he had any chronic illness or anything. If I didn't ever read up on the cause of his death, if he had a heart attack or something, I don't know.
Oh, I could do that
But I
real
guess that's
quick.
very easily discoverable.
Let's well, it's it sounds like he had an illness, but it wasn't like a long drawn out thing. So yeah,
79 in June of 1966 in Beverly Hills.
yes.
Yeah. Oh no, wait, esophageal cancer? Oh,
Right, but I mean that's a nasty last few months. Well, who knows? Maybe that was a condition for years, but I don't know. I doubt it.
that's a bad cancer. So yeah, it tends to
Yeah.
act
Okay.
fast. So that's unfortunate. I
Yeah.
kind of hoped he just, fell asleep and died of
Mm.
natural causes and not gone through any suffering because we love Ed Wynn.
But he was working right up to, he was working in 1966, so at
Yeah.
least that was the case. So he's, I guess chipper for an older feller in this episode, so that
And
works
as
out.
we don't know if we mentioned it while on the air, but he was born November 9th, which is like yesterday as we record this. So this was his 138th birthday or something
Yeah,
this
it would
week.
have been very surprising if he was still around at that point. You got the guys in the Bible. He, lived 900 years, which I
Well,
don't
I
know.
don't say it as if he would really have been that
Right.
age. Like I'm just saying that is his age as of now, dead or alive. It's like celebrating Shakespeare's 400th birthday or something. It's like, well, of course he's gone.
Okay, I guess I'll just end this episode then by quoting Mitch Hedberg, the comedian, with "I haven't slept for 10 days because that would be too long." Yeah, do a plug there, but yeah. People
Yeah, we
listen
seem
or
to
they
keep
don't.
dropping the plugs lately.
That's the first time I've dropped it. Usually it's a loop decision and drop the plug, but I was like, oh, I just said it as final line, and
Did you ever just
yeah.
thought of recording a boilerplate one with little music under it and
I
say, "Here's all
think
our
I ri-
podcasts."
I think I originally did, and it might be in the first episode of Matt and Lou's Sci-Fi Sanctuary, and maybe the second one, and then I'd stopped doing it because it seemed cheesy. Yeah, but
Well, if you had a single website, you can just say, "Go to this website." I mean, you usually throw out the Patreon website, right, as
right,
your
right, right. But we've
URL.
recently had the existential crisis. Maybe we shouldn't send people a Patreon because they think that means it's has to be money, right? So I've gone more to just naming the podcast and saying, go look for that name. You'll find something there.
Well, like Roddenberry, you could just have podcastiopodcastius.com and then just put all your links to everything there.
Yeah, technically, I guess that's what the Patreon is, but we have been like, well, maybe that looks like yeah, looks like Patreon
Well,
that
and
way,
a link
doesn't
to
it?
Patreon is from there as well,
Right.
but you can
Right.
point to all the syndications of all the
Anyway,
podcasts
yeah, today I just
and
decided
have a
not to
blog and talk about weird crap.
I used
And
to
you
do
can
that.
post more pictures of food from Japan.
Oh
Did you
yeah.
see my food pictures? We ate out a lot this weekend.
Oh, let's see.
We had fondue and then we had hot pot. It was good.
Oh, yes, I saw the fondue. Oh, was that out? Okay, for some reason I thought you did that at your house.
No, no. I mean, we could, I suppose, if we dig out our fondue sets, which are in the
Okay, yeah,
garage.
the
Like
hot pot is clearly at a restaurant. I hadn't seen that one, I think.
that's a
Uh,
chain, apparently. It's a Moo hot pot. I don't know.
I mean, we got
Uh,
this all over Japan. Just oh, that's like
hmm
nabe, is it? That's Korean, right?
Is it Korean or Japanese or I don't even know what it is. It's just Moo.
Well, yeah, it does. It's got big potatoes in it. Okay, that's an American twist, I think. Huh.
We had mostly mushroom. I don't think I had any potatoes. There might have been mushrooms. I had some sliced meat, but it was off to the left of the photo. You can't see it. Had some chicken and some beef.
Oh,
Wow.
now I'm looking at your fondues and I'm seeing where it looks like a restaurant. I guess, I was looking on my phone and I thought that was just like a normal couch in the back, but now I'm seeing it's another booth. So,
Yeah, it's got a hot plate in the middle that to cook the fondue on at the table, so it's always prepared right there in front of
because
you.
I think I put a fondue. Yep, there it is. A week before I had also fondue somewhere.
It's kind of unusual going to two restaurants back to back that both have cooking at the table, at least for
And
Americans.
oh yeah, as well say for Americans
At
maybe.
you,
Yeah.
it's par for the course. Yeah, every meal is like that, probably.
It's a Bill Murray line lost in translation. What kind of restaurant makes you cook your own food?
I should watch that again. I like that movie.
Well, that movie actually came out like right about the time I first came to Japan, so I can watch it as kind of a time capsule. Like, one, that's what Japan used looked like then, and two, oh, that's the kind of asshole foreigner I was when I first came here. Because now I know how to walk the walk, but I don't know how to talk the talk that well. But I know how to walk the walk for the most part, and
So,
so
is any of your friends wanting to move to Japan now that America is over?
oh, everyone always says they want to move to Japan, right? Uh, I just did it.
You did just do it.
I did just done it. Yeah, I guess there's because the Roddenberry folks have done the exodus from Twitter, I guess, after the election, which I haven't. I mean, everything's automated, whatever. So it just automates. It says, here's a podcast. Here's a podcast. That's about all that Twitter does for me.
Yeah, I was just telling this to John the other day, probably in After Dark or something, that when my third party Twitter app that actually just shows me the tweets in chronological order with no ads finally up and died because the API was killed by Elon. That's when I
I
kind of
think I
gave up on
showed
Twitter.
this before. If you can see it, I don't, and maybe you can't see. I still have the blue bird as my. I still have
Yeah, I
old
do
Twitter on
too. In
there.
fact, I think I downloaded the last Bluebird version and sideloaded it in my phone just to have it there, just say,
Yeah, I
see,
just
it's
put
still the
no.
bird.
Yeah, I just same here. I just put no updates, and I've kept the bird on my iPad. It's now the X, but here it's just the bird. I don't get notices, but like my Twitter was always like, well, Star Trek stuff and dumb theme park stuff. That was my
Mhm.
Twitter, so that was kind of nice. I,
Well,
But especially as X went on, you would start getting like, "Hey, you want to hear J.K. Rowling's new tweet?" I'm like, "No." So that I'd occasionally shove one in, but I didn't get a whole lot of political content on my Twitter, which is nice. Even
Yeah,
face,
I never got that much either until, well, like I said, the app I was using was a third party, so it was not getting any of the ads. And so
let's
of course it had to die. They made it so that it died. And they'll
yeah,
probably kill the one that still has the bird on it on your phone and my phone at some
they'll
point too.
find a
So
way. Yeah, maybe
they'll
that's
give
when I'll
it
just get rid
they'll
of it.
find a way of making it stop working. So
But let's see what's on my Facebook feed because everyone's like, "That's so political," and I don't engage in it so to the degree where let's see. First one is Nightmare on Elm Street, uh, Lego, John Lennon's son, Julian. Here's a political post from someone I know. Here's another one, same person, but it's funny and it's still political. Uh, Eagle Scout Court of Honor from an Eagle Scout that I used to be an Eagle Scout with. John Delancey. Oh, you want him in your feed? Okay, there we go. So yeah, I don't have too much charged stuff in my feeds, which is nice. I feel like I don't get quite as social media poison as other people. Also, might be because I'm accessing it from outside the States. I don't know.
oh, that's an angle I didn't thought of. No, I followed a variety of celebrities, either Star Trek or other, you know, fandoms, and still a variety of interesting people that I'd accumulated. Not that many, it was under 100, but I think a lot of them has dropped off. A lot of them just said, screw it. I mean,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
long prior to now, when it turned into X, I think a lot left, and it's just been a slow attrition. So I don't know
Yes,
how many
but
people are left
well, it's just
to
there's
whether worth
right.
watching.
It's just there's not like a good replacement yet.
Hmm.
I mean, there's Threads, but I mean, it's not like that's like, hey, Threads isn't really something everybody has, I think. Like I put Mastodon on my phone and stuff a couple years ago, made an account and then proceeded to like never use it, you know?
Oh, I think I follow you on Mastodon.
Okay, I wouldn't know. I'd start an
And
account
it's
and
funny you mentioned that because in the Discord, somebody just brought up, "Hey Jessica, can you turn on Threads interaction with Mastodon so you can look at threads from Mastodon?"
so someone's still using it. Okay. Like
Well, they're
it's
trying to get this whole federated thing of like, well, here, I'll send you this link. That's in the Discord too. Um, I think Blue Sky might be working towards that. They're also doing other things, but Threads explicitly said we're going to try to integrate with Mastodon so you can talk back and forth between the two. And if all these little Twitters all kind of join forces and so everybody can see each other's stuff, then it may just kind of create a new platform that can
mm.
compete with Twitter,
Or we could all
overall.
just get on Truth Social.
Oh my God.
That's actually a
I'm
step down.
anticipating Elon will buy Truth Social and for another 10 billion, and then he'll just integrate it straight into Twitter, and then it will become,
Oh
Nazi
God.
Central.
Okay, as well. So that actually does sound accurate now that you're saying it. But no, for me, I guess that's the thing. I'm just like now my social media is just I use it as communication, like private communication with well, private, and I'm sure they're getting my data, but you know, as in it's not just on the feed, right? I don't care about the feed on Facebook for the most part. I don't go doom scrolling like ever.
Right.
So I just do the most scrolling I've done for a while talking to you right there and seeing what I'm
Yeah, the
actually
only place
being
I would
given.
scroll a little bit on like Instagram because there's pictures and it's like, oh, what's this? What's this? What's this? But
No, my
they just
biggest
keep
personal use for
pushing
Twitter
cat
is
pictures at me mostly. So
yeah, the biggest like thing I do with Twitter now is I listen to podcasts The Ride and they often talk about weird crap that then they post to their Twitter. So they don't do it on their
oh,
Instagram so much. So I just want to, see that.
Oh no, he's still in the chair.
That darn cat.
That darn cat is where we all started. Hey, that darn cat.
Like one of the hosts of that show is on a temporary leave because of work or whatever. So he's been posting reaction videos, rebuttals to the episodes when those are on Twitter. So
Rebuttals to the episodes?
because doing a directing job, so he's not on every episode right now. So when they say
Oh,
mad
okay.
stuff he doesn't agree with, he films a rebuttal video and posts it to Twitter.
So is Mark like in charge of the social media aspect of Podcastio?
I don't think anyone's in charge, which is maybe why there's not much of a
I'm surprised you just
presence.
haven't claimed Podcastio as your main identity on Twitter, uh,
Oh, just post
Blue
everything through
Sky,
there.
whatever, and then just, set up the mechanism to post all your podcasts to that feed, and then you'd have a constant stream of, um, you know,
Films and Filth and the
advertising.
Disney one just post directly. They're automated from the podcast, from
Mhm.
Transistor. You can automate it. For some reason, time enough, there was one of those dumb security things where it wants to know something you just can't know anymore or something. Like you have the password and stuff, but then it's, oh, I know it wants to call a phone I don't have anymore to confirm.
Oh,
So that's why Time Enough doesn't automatically post to Twitter. But I don't care anymore. So I mean, people are listening, so whatever, someone's listening
well,
to the episodes.
I don't know what I can do, but if I can volunteer to assist anyway, I think it'd be kind of fun to
Well, I need to make a new
have some
account because
sort
I
of
can't.
thing.
Apparently, I can't log into the Time Enough account anymore because it wants to call a phone I don't own.
That's the problem with two-factor authentication. You lose one of the factors and you're screwed.
Exactly. Right, right, right. And it's like I never told it to do that in the first place. So,
There's this whole other mechanism. Have you ever heard of UB keys? I got a hold of one of these little guys. They
oh
have
yeah.
like crypto things on it, and you can tap the little button to tell it to generate a code through, and it will actually, send a code to your keyboard and or
Ah,
whatever, so you can input things. And so it proves that you're you because that key is linked to your account. So that's kind of fun.
yeah. It's like I did my first credit card tap yesterday. How behind does that make
Ooh.
me?
I've been doing that for a while. I
No, I
learned
know.
a bad lesson though. It's like if you do it with your debit card and you intend to take cash out of the your bank while you're at it, the debit card tap will just run the transaction. But if you stick it in the machine or swipe it or whatever, then it gives you the option, do you want to withdraw cash? Because I wanted to take some cash out of my account when I was at the grocery store, and I tapped it and it didn't let me do that. So I had to go make another purchase just so I could then do it the right way so I can get the stupid 20 bucks I wanted.
No, I've gone most of the years all cash transaction because like occasionally I'll have a credit card and then it expires and then I'll get the new one, but I don't physically have it. So I can use it online, but I can't use it in stores. So all my store transactions are in cash. So since my folks visited,
Yeah.
they gave me the physical card so I can use it again until
I learned that
2027.
one of my cards had just expired when I went to that bank, and he said, "Oh, your card's expired. We must have sent you a new one." And I thought, "Oh God, that's probably in an envelope on my desk somewhere that I haven't opened yet." So I have to go looking for that envelope now. It's like, oh geez.
Okay. Well, tell us what your credit card information is while it's still recording. Just kidding.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop the recording. Later, folks.